Welcome to Finding Inspiration. The goal of this show is to comment, discuss, and critique various artworks that I find on the internet that I think are very good, or of what other people request for me to talk about. And the purpose of this, the goal, is to try to gain some kind of inspiration from the artwork and to possibly gain additional knowledge from it to improve one's own artistic abilities. I hope you enjoy the show. Here we have a great work by Darius Zavadsky titled The Serpent. This guy has a really great art style, kind of similar to an artist by the name of Bekzinski, also because I think they're both Polish. Nonetheless, I might have got that wrong, but hey, this artwork, again, has a nice background to it. Of course, it's that sort of, as I sort of call it, sort of amorphous, just kind of atmospheric feel. It gives a feel to it. So this sort of calm blue into sort of a lighter, kind of neutral, slight peach, some darker brown. But the actual subject matter, this character, is so wild and of course has that human familiarity to it. Makes it easy to kind of understand and just awesome display of technique through the way the lighting hits everything. And I love sort of this on the forehead, the sort of the scales and everything going around it, but that circle is left open, which has a triangle on it, so hey, some symbolism there. But the blue, the color of the shade of blue there used for the eyes and then the skin and everything, and if you look at the actual skin and all the, this is great, giving a real further intensity of realism to it. Having all the fold lines on the knuckles and the tendons in the hands, great. Now you can't see a whole lot else of the rest of their sort of body because it's covered up by these sort of snake skins, and you have sort of its mouth is kind of popping out there, and the sort of green elements, and just I love the fusion of the colors all molding together. You've got this sort of neck piece and everything, kind of it's almost like an armor. And you can't see quite much of the neck there, but then you this sort of Naga, it reminds me of Naga Siren from Dota, but this sort of headpiece kind of coming back. And I love the way it's connecting from the cheek and sort of the temples and the back of the head up over. I particularly like that kind of form, and I think he's used that more in his own artworks. And of course you have this sort of decrepit feel to it because of the holes in it. So there's sort of this loss, sort of this filminess to it. And definitely on a very kind of aquatic feel, which you wouldn't really get from snakes, but there are water snakes, hey. And just looking at it again, this piece definitely works well for something kind of atmospheric. Definitely very calm, sort of peacefulness to it, but there is sort of almost this deeper kind of harsh, alien, almost horrific sense, which I think really mostly comes from just the snake elements and the scales and how real and on point the detail and lighting is. Very, very well done. This next piece has what I would sort of call sort of folkloric feel to it. This is Ankur by Rodolfo. And in a very interesting sort of setting. Some works of art, the sort of focus is definitely predicated on the setting. And it's building up kind of the landscape, the different creatures, interactions, and kind of what's going on. This one is definitely kind of an interesting one. If you have these sort of, it's very ethereal. That's sort of a core word that I would use for this one. It feels kind of like it's in a cave, just because at the top I get this feeling of stalactites tight. I think tights are the one from tops. Mites are on the bottom. I could have them backwards, but hey, you know what I'm talking about. However, it's a little hard to tell necessarily. Maybe it's the cave opening, and certainly it looks like there's some birds in the background, so definitely going into the distance, and there's no real sun point or any real obvious light source. Certainly there has to be enough of one because the water has reflection on it. Very well done reflection. And the art style is sort of there's more of a roundness to it. Not a lot of line. The forms are a little more amorphous. But I like the way it all flows through and just the movement of everything and the forms of these sort of on the bottom part on the two sides you have these sort of crystalline kind of objects, these series of forms that kind of flow, and then sort of the middle of them, right in the middle of the piece, you have this interesting sort of floating, almost like a flower, this sort of spherical flower that has this interesting juxtaposed chimera sort of sitting on it. I kind of, again, I get that feeling of sort of folkloric symbolism maybe a little bit, and kind of that just feeling of archaic kind of style and look that, I feel like this could almost come from, 17th century or something like that, even before then. Especially because of it's hard to place necessarily. I can't quite find the word, but I do like this. Again, all the forms in that sky piece, really, I just like looking at that. The layering, there's so much layers on that. And this sort of woman that's kind of hanging on that tree who's part grasshopper. All these juxtaposed pieces and forms really make it just interesting to look at. It's just very interesting to look at, which is what I like the most about surrealism. It just makes the artwork very interesting. For our third piece, we have The Battle of Thoughts by Joseph Art. This is a nice little kind of, it's hard to place sort of there's definitely a lot of these artworks that I talk about, they certainly don't have a singular word, which is sometimes, and that's kind of a common element, you sort of lose your ability to almost formulate and put together words that make sense. Now, I like the use of the chess pieces and everything, especially this sort of duality of mind, sort of the obvious body, and the mind is sort of, eye level up, and that it is this, that the game of chess is this complex, formulated thing that is mostly in the mind. It is up here, you're constantly doling it out, and it sort of is a symbolic expression of the power of the mind and the strength of everything, and that we can fight battles and do all these things in our heads that we normally wouldn't be able to do with our hands and in actuality. So within this surreality, especially expressed here, we can do this impossible element. And the very nice, this blue, a lot of blues going on with some works I've been talking about lately. But blue is great because of, it's very calming, deep, kind of reassuring, but it also sort of, it has this sedative effect, kind of this cooling monotony to it. And it can feel, a little round, but sort of sharp in a sense. And I do like how the background has that geometrical essence to it. Kind of putting it as sort of like a box that if you were to put this sort of in kind of a geometrical space, it gives it kind of, instead of being flat, honestly, there's not much really to that kind of putting into a geometrical element. It's just not flat, really. And it kind of messes with your perception a little bit. And I kind of wish there was, I like the hand that's on the left. I kind of wish there was another hand kind of maybe kind of piecing it in, because this another element that I just got now is not only is the mind something that we can control and do things in, but we kind of have a lack of control in many ways. And as predicated here, these two sides, if there was another hand kind of controlling the other side, it would get this feeling that, sometimes the mind fights itself, or it kind of has to go through these scenarios that we have. Definitely a great work to sort of contemplate about, and is a good expression of a human element that we deal with on a day-to-day surface. This piece here is just a lot of just fun, I think. This is The Moth Catcher by Entre. I state this as being fun because, to me, surrealism is a lot of fun because you can just mess with things. You can play around. It's very playful. It's crazy. Because when you get just inane, maniacal juxtaposition of form, such as what's displayed here, it's just kind of like, wow. It's definitely playful, and I kind of like the sort of fourth walls kind of breakage with the hands kind of flowing out with the the brushes there. But kind of, if we were to analyze the elements, definitely one of the first thing that pops out is, I'm pretty sure that's a Sharingan in that eyeball next to the teeth there. It's definitely a Sharingan, which of course is from Naruto. Not that I'm a weeaboo or anything, but hey, it's just interesting. That's kind of a unique thing. I bet a lot of people wouldn't pick that up, but even so, it's a nice. I love that sort of eye element, and just different forms of eyeballs and everything are always very common and kind of cute and fun little thing to do, and can give this eeriness, especially the vertical eye. As I've stated before, I like the vertical eye, and actually, if you pull back a bit, going down to where the tongue is, you get this, there's this sort of slit, this symmetrical form kind of opening, and then with the Sharingan on the top, I'm getting a very serious clitoral feel from this here. The eye, if you kind of imagine the eye as being the clitoris and the opening being the rest of the vagina, well, yeah, that's fairly clear there, I think. So you got this sort of subtle sexuality here. I love the lips and everything where the tongue is very, the folds and everything it looks very thick and meaty, and then part of the cheeks are not even there, they're exposed. You see the teeth with everything. I love that. And how it's all kind of placed together in this sort of moody, dark background, which isn't completely flat and black. You have this sort of element on the left, and there is definitely a bit of a green hue going on, a little bit. And it's just kind of funny, this moth, which is very normal looking, is just kind of looking at this just like, what in the world, And it's kind of funny to look at this from the moth's perspective, So I kind of think of that, maybe this is a nightmarish figure the moth is kind of expressing, or this sort of voidish element that is just breaking out of this nothingness. Although it kind of is flowing from this bottom part, which does look kind of like intestines that's sort of sitting on this kind of mantle almost, this sort of floor. That definitely, and another thing too, when the forms are not as defined, it makes you have to utilize your imagination more, of kind of wondering what this is and then what it symbolizes, if at all. Again, stuff like this can be very playful and fun and can just be for the sake of it. Last but most certainly not least, we have Untitled 5 by Grazop. I like this one here. Very kind of classical looking, a little dark though, certainly, and I do like that, I always gotta have the ladies, of course, and very well done. The technical acumen displayed here is great. You have, of course, the female form, and then I love how everything is, you have this sort of draped, the female form is draped by all these other forms and subjects, which is something that's kind of predicated throughout art history, expressing just sort of what we see throughout the ages that people wear, and just the expression of personality through these garments that we wear. Why is it that humans wear things on top, and what is the purpose of it? Is it some way to express some inner element? And so is this an expression of her inner element? Or, as in some other cases, is it some kind of locking body that sort of holds them in? Certainly, she doesn't seem uncomfortable, but she's kind of just sort of there, fairly neutral. But I like all of the pearls and everything. It gives this nice roundness, which flows well with the flaky openness in the deep layers of the flowers. And then all the ruffles. The ruffles are really great. It's almost hard to tell if these ruffles sort of on this dress piece and the headpiece are not flowers themselves. They actually look very much like it, but because they are of this similar gradient color, and because you don't get that full bulb from the flower, or of a flower, it's not quite clear. And certainly a lot of dresses in that sort of art, the style of dress, definitely almost aids with that floweriness. All these sort of petal-like feels and flows, and I do like, again, how it kind of fades into black, and whenever anything is on a black canvas, a black background, it makes everything just explode. It makes all the colors just pop out and just be very, very fierce, even if it's very calm and kind of quiet. But again, red is kind of intense, so there's this sort of intensity. But it's not too much, so there's a good, delegation between that and then the sort of somberness and, her good skin complexion, which is done very well. Good thickness and realism to that. I think is a good way to kind of end our episode on this nice little high point. I hope all of you enjoyed this episode. Please watch the next one. It should be coming out day from now. I try to do this Monday through Friday as much as I possibly can. And if you have any sort of ideas, or if you want me to talk about a particular artist, a particular work of art, just send me a message. My Twitter info is below in the details, and hey, you can just leave a comment or whatever you like to do. All of it works the exact same. And yeah, I hope you all enjoyed it. Have a good one.